feel arts in India are always confined to either like horribly as a subject or as something that you do when you have time. Particularly in a city like Bangalore, we're lucky to have people from all over India, and I think people crave that. I feel like they don't get enough of that in uh, in a meaningful, thoughtful way.
So when places like BIC come to mind, community comes straight away, right? So how important is community involvement in such public spaces?
It's really important, and it's also important to understand how much expertise the community has in what. So very often, I'm going to say something a little controversial, people overestimate their expertise. So when you ask for community inputs, it often becomes a forum for everyone to give gyan and in a way then feel offended that I wasn't listened to. So it has to be done with care. I feel like the greater element for spaces like BIC is to program in a way that communities build. So say for example, yesterday we had a program on Yakshagana where it did the entire process of Yakshagana, where the artists come, they do their ceremonies on stage, they get dressed on stage, and then they start the performance. And all this time, explanations are being given to people who are in the audience and in bilingual format. So what that does is there's a community that cares about Karnataka folk art that starts coming together around it. And so your curation of programs, of events, that is a more powerful way of building community. Yes, I think to your first question, in designing of these spaces, urban commons are important, and so parks or spaces like BIC become crucial to that, libraries also. And they must be designed by people who understand communities. So it must not be some designer sitting in an ivory tower. It must be someone who totally understands when you walk into a space, how does it make you feel? It's like your campus. You walk in and there's so much greenery and it feels like I'm welcome here, I'm home, I'm comfortable. That's the kind of design principles you need.
Right. So you have a background in tech, finance and education, and you have worked with the government also, like back in Delhi, right? So how do you think this adds to how you're fostering a cross-disciplinary dialogue or public discourse in BIC?
I'll tell you when I figure it out.
Oh my God.
No, I started off in corporate because that's sort of where everyone starts as a middle class person. You start working, and I did 10 years of that. I really enjoyed it. I was reasonably successful at it, but something inside me said I want to do something for a greater cause. So I started working in education, and that's how I went to Delhi, worked with the government schools there. And now I see my work at BIC, as a larger extension of that idea. I feel arts in India are always confined to either like horribly as a subject or as something that you do when you have time. It's not one of those things that you say, oh, it's an integral part of our life and it has the possibility to teach you a lot. You watch a painting and sometimes you may not fully understand it, but it teaches you something about the time that the artist lived in, perhaps some things about gender, some things about social structures. All of these things come to you.
Right.
And that kind of education, and to your earlier point about communities, right, like when you meet people and talk about that experience, I feel it leads to a deeper and more meaningful education for a lot of people, which we miss out on. So I think in that sense BIC is enabling that. We're trying to help that, and on the flip side, like I think what it does is for writers, artists, performers, it allows them to connect with audiences, so they get that feedback too. In a way, it's their learning as well, because otherwise, very often performers and artists and writers speak in these echo chambers.
Right.
And everyone's telling you similar things. But what BIC does is it brings these curious, absolutely organic audiences into performances. because of our model where every event is free and it's open to everyone. Even the people who come to BIC as experts, they get some feedback which is unique and relevant to them. I think you were at the Amitabh Ghosh event.
Yes.
He said on stage that he really enjoys coming to BIC because there's a different kind of questions that come up in our audience. And I think that's really a sign of good education, like when people ask good questions.
So BIC has been a hub for art, culture and also intellectual discourse for such a long time, and it's very accessible, as you said. So how do you think integrating local culture, local art reflects upon a community identity and making a public space a community anchor?
So one can think of it in multiple ways, and particularly in a city like Bangalore, we're lucky to have people from all over India come here. And I was, when I was interviewing for this position, one of my board members had told me this amazing insight. She said that Bangalore is a very, very unique city because you have people from all parts of India, but at all income levels.
Right.
In other parts of other big cities in India, people come in largely as at the bottom of the labor pyramid. But in Bangalore, because of the tech industry and the design industry and so many other, there's manufacturing as well, you get people from all across the country coming in to work in that space. So you can actually design and curate programs which are community driven, but without any limitations in your mind, right? So for example, we could have a Manipuri singer.
Yes.
And it'll bring the Manipuri community in Bangalore together. I mean, I'll answer the question more directly. For Kannada and Karnataka culture, we have a very clear plan and what we try and take forward, where this folk art is one part that we want to explore. We want to explore translations of Kannada works. We want to make sure that Kannada Rajyotsava is celebrated every year with pomp, and which covers the food of Karnataka, the writings of Karnataka, the trees and the flora and fauna of Karnataka, all that we celebrate. So that community comes around that. But in other communities, it's very often we do Tamil plays, we do Marathi books, and all of these we see, suddenly, I didn't realize there were so many Marathi speaking people who would be willing to come to an event. And I think people crave that. I feel like they don't get enough of that in a meaningful, thoughtful way, where you get to celebrate your own subculture within India, but with pride and with people of your ilk. And I think you miss your language in a sense.
Yes.
So we do enable that, but for Kannada we have a very clear plan. For the others, it's more opportunistic. If the program comes our way, we do it. Now you put the idea in my head, so I'll have to think about it.
So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.